Hey you guys, it's me, Mavely, and we're here hanging out again, so thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about how I let go of perfectionism and how I'm unlearning control and needing to clench onto life or to figure it out or to try to mastermind it. And I think this also closely relates to this question I have for you. Because of course, this is all self-reflection, right? It's, am I still waiting to be chosen? Am I still waiting for someone else to just wrap me up in like the largest, warmest hug of admiration and praise and just tell me how good of a human being I am, or to just celebrate me? Now, if that's still something that you desire, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. You know, a lot of people in the New Age movement would think or would say that you shouldn't desire that. It's not that we need to not have desires. We are human beings, in fact. It's that we need to know our desires. And it's the knowing of them which will then protect us from being manipulated or being unconsciously engaging with people for that desire instead of whether or not they're a good person for us to interact with. And so we don't have to pretend like we're not a human being. And we don't have to pretend like we're perfect, right? Like that's the point of this conversation we're having tonight. And I am tired, and so just excuse any, humanness, I guess, that I may have tonight. So thank you. So letting go of perfectionism in order to have peace may not be what you think. So I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, I desire happiness. I want things to work out for me. I need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure that everything comes out as planned. Or I want to make sure that things move smoothly. And while all of those are very noble things, there is polarity. So there's a full spectrum of experiences and a full spectrum of the human expression and experience in life. And so, and in ourselves, honestly, that's what we're getting to tonight, right? Is that you are this luscious, divine human being who is not a sterile Barbie or Ken, who is not this robotic entity that doesn't experience variation. You know, it's like I had this realization lately that I grew up in Minnesota, which is in the United States, which is very much a dynamic weather state. We have, at least when I was growing up, it was winter, 9 months out of the year, lots of snow, lots of bitter cold, -30 degrees was normal. And of course, it's not quite like that. It's a little bit more warming up. Last couple winters, we haven't really had snow. But that's a different conversation. What I want to talk about is that I grew up in these varying weather patterns, right? Like in the summer, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, it's 70, 80, humid, but hot. And, we go swimming and there's like lush green everywhere. But always the seasons are turning, and in the summer you have thunderstorms, loud, and then torrential rain sometimes, and And then you have the dry sun for a while, and then you have the cold sun in the winter. Okay, so you get my point, right? I think it was Ernest Hemingway. I'm not sure. I'll try to fact check this. But he said, "Within me, I have found an endless summer." And even me last year, I was like, fuck that, when I heard that quote, because I was living in the winter and I was like, I'm done with winter. But I can now understand a little bit more of what he was saying, is that there's this eternal space within us that is untouched. And if we know how to access this internal peace and harmony, then we don't have to have our conditions around us be perfect in order for us to feel peace, or for us to feel like, oh yeah, life's good. I came back to Minnesota after living in the high desert for 3-4 years and having less variation in the weather patterns, and also just it was different. I didn't have those weather patterns in my bones. And so when I came back to Minnesota, I was so delighted to feel such a resonance with the nature and the trees and the rivers and the water and the landscape. I just kind of felt at home again. And in that variation of weather that I've already experienced since being here within a couple months, right? Lots of rain, which doesn't happen where I was. And of course, the heat and the nice summer hot sand on the Great Lake of Superior. I just realized, like, if I am going to honor the variability that I have as a human being, and my emotions and my moods and my desires and my visions and my capacities, then I can celebrate that, because I celebrate it in nature. I celebrate it with Mother Earth. I celebrate and enjoy dancing in the rain, or I enjoy going from the hot sand to the cold water, or I'm learning to enjoy it. I mean, I honestly didn't like to swim a lot in the cold water, but I have little kids and they were really encouraging me to, like, come swim. And I've been really working on this for myself, is really, can I just enjoy the moment? Can I just, like, really surrender into each moment and what it has to offer? And I jumped into that water, and instead of being like, in the cold, or I just finally learned to dive right in and to just take on the experience. And instead of focusing on maybe some discomfort, I focused on the joy that my kids and I were having, laughing and swimming and jumping in the water. And that was just so much more. I finally felt alive. And if you're someone like me who is recovering from perfectionism, where we like to have all the details right before we feel okay, I'm here to tell you that this life is in the dynamic experience of it. It's not in the details, or it's not in the getting the details right. There's no right or wrong, and I've known that for years. But I wasn't fully alive, because even though I was like, okay, well, I need to, like, forgive myself, or I need to just be at peace with how things are. I understand the life cycles, and I was really intellectually chewing on that. However, I wasn't embodying it. I wasn't saying, like, oh, wow, like, this now moment is beautiful. This now moment, I can access joy, or I can access the depths of this grief and cry. And so a lot of perfectionism, performance, and control, even anger, these are our ways that we are conditioned in a society that, or within family units, or even as a soul before we got here, because we had these imprints from other lifetimes, we forget that peace comes from being in the present moment with the fullest expression of our humanity. So if that means that you're grieving and you need to cry, or you need to just feel desperate about what's happening, then the expression of feeling that is what then will bring you peace, because peace comes from harmony within the moment, not from performing for whatever you think you need to be in that moment. We too often are playing as a character instead of being the human being. And the funny thing is I've realized, as I really start coming into my beingness more and more and more and more, is that I used to feel like I'm such a good person, I'm nice, I think I'm funny, but I feel like people find me intimidating. It's hard for me to make friends. I feel like people don't understand me. And it's taken me a lot of self-reflection recently to really admit and understand. And I've had some synchronicities happen where the teaching is just like, come on, get this in your head by now, is saying to me, people can't relate to you because you're not being authentic in the moment, and they feel there's something amiss with you, with me. I went through this too. And so it's not that people don't like me, it's that they don't get it. There's something disharmonic. There is something out of alignment in the etherical, energetic space of what I was feeling and experiencing, and how my inner being was actually experiencing this particular moment or situation, and how I masked and how that didn't match. They could catch that because, we're actually more sensing than we are logic. And so there was this disconnect. No matter how good the masking is, no matter how good we think we're doing at being a perfectionist or at being that certain person in the world, it's slipping through. And what's the sad part is I just realized this thing about there's face yoga and stuff, and I'm, starting to see a little aging on my face. And one of the things said that the reason that people have certain sag lines and certain pulls in their face is because, and their body, is because the fascia is stuck. And because we're performing. If I hadn't kept my face in a certain way for so long, then I wouldn't have these wrinkles. But, I also heard that these are a sign of empathy, the capacity for empathy. So, I got lots of that. I guess that's a bonus. So if it's not about performing, if it's not about being perfectionist or being the character you think that the people around you want to experience, then what is it about? Glad you asked. It's about being in flow. It's about being in resonance with your inner being and your outer being. Now, people are now calling this authenticity. Collective consciousness is happening, right? We are evolving as a collective, so yay for us. So now we're in a time where authenticity is celebrated. That requires being honest with how we actually feel in our internal experience and learning how to allow that to be accurately and coherently translated into our external environment. And I think there is a caveat to this, right? As there always is. But the caveat is that we still want to be aware of ourselves, the conscious observer, because for a while we're learning to be authentic about how we feel in our inner experience, there will be projections, distortions, ways that we try to protect ourselves, right? Because we're finally being vulnerable, which is going to be the scariest thing ever. And now we have to use other mechanisms to protect that vulnerability. If it's not actually lying to ourselves about what we're feeling and being dishonest to the other people around us, we have to force people to love us and like us. That could be a drawback of some shadow work that still needs to be done. So what am I talking about? I'll give you a personal example. Okay, so I had this like super quick serving job recently that meh. But anyways, you're not here to hear about that. But I promised myself that no matter what was the outcome or, I was going to be authentic and I was just going to play and have fun with it and just have the chance to just be myself, right? Because at 32 years old, almost 33, I need practice doing that. And so I went in just being authentic and I was having a moment of authenticity. And this came out of my mouth. Everyone was around, super social situation, this super like, oh, come on and do this with us, Maeve, come on. And I said something that really undercut myself. And everyone was like, what the fuck? Why did you just say that about yourself? And I was like, oh shit. Once I said it, I was like, that is really fucked up. But immediately I knew why I said it, because I felt vulnerable in that situation. I felt like because people in my life had already told me that I was a B, and I had been around some really unhealthy people, that they made me, I had this belief system that when I was being authentic or strong-headed, or if I was being really assertive about who I knew I was, that I would be called a B or bossy or whatever. So I made this undercutted like comment about how maybe they only liked me because they're scared of like not liking me or something like that. I don't remember, but it was gross. It was like, and then I immediately was like, oh wow, there's a strong one. There's a belief system. And it was uncomfortable, of course, for a minute, but I am so well versed in this reflection and this skill that I teach you guys that I can more quickly do it in the moment, right? It's like that shame, those days of having like days and days of like worrying thoughts and obsessing about it and worrying about it and feeling bad or guilty about it, that's gone for me. And so if that's something you still struggle with, let me know. Look through the other videos, because you guys, that's what I teach here and that's what we're here for. So back to the flow. What was the point of this story? As you're learning to become authentic, you're going to project your own self-judgments, your own fears on the situations. And so you're not always going to be interacting accurately to the situation or to the other person. Like if it is a really loving person and you're assuming that they're going to perceive you as a B, it's probably not accurate, right? Like we have to quickly catch and reflect. What did I expect of this? What belief am I running right now? And was that accurate? Was there actually cues? Is this person actually behaving in this way to confirm that? Is that really what's happening, right? So those are good reflection questions as you're learning to be authentic. And when we can be authentic, we are in flow with ourselves, with life. So this is what I say all the time: how to be in the world, but not of it. How do you remain in your own self-dominion? How do we keep our own soul essence and sanctity? How do we live within the sanctuary of our own self and still operate out in the world? We are still here having the experience we're having. Really, being in flow is about being in the mechanisms of the body. So the physical vessel that we live in is already designed to be peaceful. What feels like peace is what is flow for us. So like when you're in a state of feeling good, feeling easy, you don't feel resistance, you don't feel fear, you're not worried about what's happening, right? Your body can relax. It's relaxed. And so when you're in flow, you get those transcendental experiences. You get these other wave states. And that's actually how we're supposed to live more. We just live in a very modern world where we use way too much of our prefrontal cortex. We're always trying to figure things out, and it's very survivalist. So we are learning to come back into our own being, into our body, and to remember that this is the wisdom. Our body already knows. And we just have to become better stewards of our body, of our own kingdom. Because when we listen to the alarm systems that our body is sending off for us, and when we listen to the data that our body is communicating to us, then we will know when we're doing something that's good, in alignment for us, or out of alignment, which is going to create disharmony. And it's going to create things in your life that are disharmonic. They're not going to be good for you. They're going to be, you're going to have troubles with them, or going to cause more dis-ease than being in flow. And everyone's flow looks different, right? And that's why everyone's flow looks different. And so you're not going to see me or hear me saying, oh, these are the 5 foods you need to eat to feel good. Or these are the times a day where you need to practice these mantras. No, there's none of that. Because really, you're listening to your own experience, your own body, your own vibrational reality. And that's where you get the instruction. So that's why we drop into being. We come into presence. We practice presence. We can really only access anything from presence. And you know what we don't have in presence? When we're really saying, okay, what's here is here. I see it. I acknowledge it. You know what's not in our experience at that time? Anxiety. Because we're not resisting. We're not wishing it was different. We're not fighting it. And so then we have peace. And sometimes, there's going to be sadness and grief and anger and some of these other low vibrational experiences or feelings that we might have. But really then what it comes down to is, what is the story we're telling ourselves about these experiences? And that is really where the work then comes in, is once we learn to still our mind, or to still our body, and then we have to learn to still our mind. And much of the storytelling that we create is made up. So that's then how you cultivate and become flexible in the mind, is knowing what patterns and processes and conditions upset it, or what, really we become calm in the mind by staying out of situations that are disaligned for us, and then gravitating towards what works for us and what's flow for us. This is also where you start learning to trust yourself again. You start to trust yourself in the process. When we've forced ourselves to be in a way that was out of alignment for us for many years, decades, lifetimes, then of course we're not going to really trust ourselves. And there's this rebuilding of trust that has to happen, and that will come in time. And as you build experiences where you're like, oh, that was great, I navigated that well, and I'm proud of myself the way I handled it. You know, you're building that trust and self-efficacy, the belief that you can affect change on your life, and that came from inside of you, right? And so when we're not constantly trying to either pretend that we're feeling or being differently than we actually are internally, or so that's also like the way we act or behave outwardly, but it also affects how we suppress what's inside of us, right? And so a lot of this also has to do with actually allowing our experiences, our emotions to come up. And then it becomes the discipline of the mind to not go down all of the rabbit holes, to not believe what's really what the story is saying of the mind, but you can honor the emotion and the feeling and the sensation in the body, and that's where we express it. And the other caveat I wanted to say about authenticity, right, is that we're expressing ourselves, but that doesn't allow or excuse poor behavior or being toxic to other people because this is how I feel. We still have some responsibility for how we affect the other people around us. And so knowing how to express yourself in a way that, like I said, it doesn't amplify the wounds, doesn't create wounds for other people. That's really the trick of it, right? And this is very nuanced stuff that we're talking about. And you only learn by going through it and being reflective. And you can only be reflective, again, when you're being compassionate towards yourself and the people around you. One of the ways that I would have before is, obviously intellectualizing things to be perfectionistic and stay in my, mental mind. But I would have also, just so you can maybe catch these things for yourself, is stay super busy, never slow down. Even though I craved a moment of peace or of stillness, creating the chaos, with my own reactions. Oh my gosh, can you believe this is happening? And then they said this, and then it was just ghastly. It was just awful. And then Trump said this, and then can you... And then when someone shares something bad, oh yeah, I've had a bad experience like that too. And you can start feeling the chaos in this, right? And you just have to ask yourself, is this worth it for me? A lot of times we run from ourselves by participating in dramatic relationships and patterns that we know aren't good for us. When we start feeling a little bored, then we create or go talk to the person who's going to create chaos for us. We may want to pick a fight because that at least will make us feel something. And so there's this period also of when you're learning to experience peace, it's going to feel a little bit like numb, like maybe like, well, what's here? There's nothing here. Oh my gosh, what does that mean? And that's okay. It's part of the process. It's okay to feel nothingness. When I was still in my counseling career, I remember encouraging people to be like, well, if you are just the I am, you're not all the identities, you're not all of the things that you think you are, you're not the emotions, you're not your depression, you're not your PTSD. Those things are not who you are. If you're not a mom because something, because a tragedy struck your life, like, what are these identities? Can you let go of these identities? People find that really tough because we're grasping for something to have meaning. And when you start slowing down and having peace, you realize that there's no need for meaning, because when you're just in peace, then it naturally, life itself is meaningful. Just to be alive, just to be here witnessing this moment, to be alive in this moment is meaningful. And so then we stop needing to create all this meaning around us. And that's a beautiful place to be in. And then we get to create out of inspiration and wellness and goodness. So again, I just want to come back to the ways that we either run from ourselves or abandon ourselves or suppress ourselves or our emotions or our internal experience by running away from us. We really are abandoning ourselves. And so if you're somebody who still feels like, when am I going to be chosen? When are people going to love me? This is precisely why it's an inside job, because you're still not loving yourself. You're still not choosing yourself. Because you're not able to sit in your own experience and love yourself. It's real. All of that self-talk and the conditioning of self-hatred is really loud. And especially if you've had chronic mental health or illness, like these are very deep grooves. And you have to begin to let go of the identity that you are trapped in it, that you can't get over it, that it means something to be this way. So maybe just ask yourself, what do I still gain? What am I getting out of feeling this way about myself? The last piece that I'm going to leave you with is to start this process of cultivating peace in your life and dropping into your own experience. I always say with compassion and as the observer, right? It also requires just choosing peace. No matter what your mind might come up with, like, oh, but you need to be worrying about this or this. So, I always say, our trauma drama sounds very rational because it's there to keep us alive. So it's going to sound like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, you really need to make sure that doesn't happen. But that's the loop. That's the trauma's loop that just keeps playing and perpetuating the cycles of disease. And so when we learn to turn towards peace, it's because we just desire it. You desire to have peace, and so you're going to have to say, in those moments when that stuff sounds really alluring, and you're like, oh, I really want to, the addictions of the mind and the body, the physiology wants to go off on this drama. You have to say, but I want peace more. So what can I distract myself that would bring me a little bit of joy? What can I focus on that would calm my body? Like just going on a simple walk, taking a few deep breaths, laughing. I don't need that thing. I don't need that drama. Looking at pretty pictures, So I hope that's helpful. Let me know how it is. That's what we're here for, is peace and harmony and enjoying life. I don't care what the fuck is happening. My only priority now is to learn to enjoy life, to cultivate a really joyful, happy, expansive, vivacious, adventurous, stimulating, exciting, nourishing, fulfilling, inspiring, happy, expansive, joyful, deep. All of the expressions of life. Also the ups and the downs and the tender-heartedness of what life also is. I'm here for that too. So I'm also here for you if you need help navigating through some of these complexities. Another thing, just remember, these teachings are simple. It's the mind that makes it complex. It's the stories we've told ourselves that we feel we need to justify. So if you need help, let me know. My email is below, and I'll see you soon.